This is Patrick from WSOU 89.5 FM, the loudest rock, here today with Brendon Small. How you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
So we're going to be talking about the latest Dethklok album, but first I gotta tell a little story here. So when I first arrived at WSOU, my metal knowledge was very thin. And during one of my first DJ shifts, it was on a Thursday night. I always had this guy call like every few weeks. He was down in Georgia listening online because we're up in New Jersey, and he said, hey man, I'm down in Georgia, I'm smoking ribs in the back of my pickup, and I was wondering if you could play Mermaider by Dethklok. And I was like, oh man, I love everything about that. So I would always play Mermaider for this guy, and that was my introduction to Dethklok. And now you've got your fourth album, and I just have to ask, when you created Metalocalypse, did you ever imagine this band Dethklok would be doing headlining shows and recording 4 studio albums and becoming this real big project?
I don't know if I would ever have flashed forward to imagining this stuff. Honestly, I think in like 2-year patches. I mean, and sometimes like bigger picture ideas, but that's what I hoped would happen. That was the idea. Is like, how do you make this thing into something that's bigger than a TV show, you know? And so that's kind of that's the challenge, and that's the gamble that we were kind of trying to take, is like, how do you put all this stuff together and get the synergy of a TV show, an album, and a tour all together? And the answer is, you have to do a lot of stuff, and you have to start earlier. And to me, it's like the metaphor is like working in a kitchen. You may order something that has like an appetizer, an entree, and a dessert, but they got to start all those foods at different times. They got to slow roast something. They got to with your buddy and his ribs, they got to take some time and get them ready. You got to braise them. You've got to do everything you need to do, or brine them. You need to do whatever you have to do. And then hopefully you serve the whole thing up on a plate where everything's still hot and it's just ready to go. You flash fry the stuff at the end and you serve it to the audience. And that's what we're doing in a week. So we have a movie, 2 records, and a tour coming up.
Yeah, it all sounds really exciting, and I'm curious how the concept of this band kind of came to be. This metal band that's bigger than the Beatles, has its own economy and all that. I'm curious how it started, the first kind of seeds of it to the finished product on the screen.
Well, the first, what you just mentioned is an important part of the show. Why are they the biggest entertainment act on earth in this world? Because great musical-driven movies and shows have already beaten us to the punch of doing the opposite thing, which is Spinal Tap, right? Spinal Tap was a gorgeous comedy, one of the best comedies of all time, in my opinion, that was about a band kind of falling from grace, and even Tenacious D is a band that kind of can't achieve liftoff, or Flight of the Conchord is a band that can't achieve liftoff. So I knew we couldn't do that because that had been done. So I thought, with Tommy Blotcher, the co-creator, we thought, what if this band was bigger than the Beatles? And what would that mean to the world? Of the biggest band in the world was an extreme metal band. What would that mean to culture? Because going back to the Beatles, John Lennon, there's an important documentary that I saw that was also very influential called The People versus John Lennon, where it isolated a moment in John Lennon's life where he and Yoko were becoming this cultural force. They were kind of anti-war. Their voices were large. They were swaying elections, things like that. And so the CIA and the FBI were keeping tabs on them. And that was an influential part of making the show too, because we thought, if this band is that big and they can coerce through music, through the power of music, whatever their ideologies are, to an audience, then they could be considered quite dangerous. And they are dangerous, but not for those reasons, because they're idiots. So that was the genesis of the show. And then slowly but surely, before even all those concepts were thought of, I think I had to sit with my guitar and figure out what this band was going to sound like. And that was an important part to me, was, asking the question, if we make this music interesting enough, can it live on its own? And can it be played on a radio station? Can somebody request it and play it and not just be like a 35-second clip on a TV show that you forget about? How can it live inside your head? And that's the thing. It's like we always think we're on a date with the audience, and how can we make you think of us when we're away?
Yeah, that's awesome. And you are in a very unique position, almost like Spinal Tap, who you mentioned, where you're an actor who plays these musicians, fictional musicians, on a show, but you also record the music. It's a real album, a real project. Do the characters on the show ever influence how you write the songs? Because this album It's, the first full-length studio album in 10 years where in the past the music was featured on the show, and that's how you got the album. But do you ever have to get into character to write these songs now?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. This whole thing is like getting into deep character, and the whole thing is servicing a bigger world, right? So even these songs on these records to me are world building experiments. Some of them are funny and they're comical notions, and some of them are mystical and bigger, and they're kind of building a world that is and filling up these patches, this universal kind of mystical world outside of Dethklok and the band. So when I'm in the studio, when I'm working, when I'm creating stuff, I don't think it's me creating. I think it's Nathan Explosion and the band creating stuff. My voice is kind of silenced. My preference of notes kind of makes its way in there, some of my ideas, but usually it's Nathan Explosion calling the shots lyrically. And I think Squiscar's the perfectionist in the studio who wants to make sure that the guitars are right. Pickles is the drummer, and I've got my own personal Pickles and Gene Hoagland, the drummer of this project, who is a fantastic collaborator that I've been working with since we first started doing these albums. And there are many reasons that he's still in this project. One is that he's a great collaborator. Two is that he is just a monster musician, and three is that he's a creative musical person, and that's really what I'm looking for, is to collaborate with those people. So I am in character. I'm in deep character. I mean, it's just like I feel like this whole project is like I'm Serpico, the cop who had to infiltrate a whole bunch of other cops and figure out how to go about his business, or in his case, solve a problem. So I'm in deep cover. I've learned how to become a heavy metal performer by sheer fact of this show. I would not have done that outside of this. There's no way. I don't think it would have happened. But I put myself in this position, and I had to somehow not embarrass myself and deliver. And that's why I'm here. So yeah. So to answer all your questions, I have nothing to do with it. Dethklok does it. They tell me what to do. I work for Dethklok.
So I guess I'll kind of reword my next question from how I had it written down. So the single from this album, Aortic Desecration, it's been in rotation for a few weeks now at WSOU. It's got some pretty standard, Dethklok, gory lyrics in there. But if the band were to tell you how they wrote this song, what do you think they would say?
Well, this song is this is an important part. This is part of the movie too, and this is, to me, there is brutality, but the way for me to describe this would have to be kind of a little bit outside of the band, because I don't think they know what this song is really about, but I do.
Mm-hmm.
I think this song sounds like a rageful, just total, ripper, kind of like fast Slayer-esque, but with Dethklok elements. But this is really an egomaniacal tantrum. This is a self-inflicted wound, and this is rage. And that's an important part of the movie, and this song has to be played and heard at this particular time. So the song title is Aortic Desecration. That is a song of aortic meaning the heart, desecration meaning breaking. So that's what this is about. What if Cannibal Corpse wrote a song about heartache? That's what this song is.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I saw you mention in an interview that because of the musical element, Metalocalypse was never like a normal TV show. So I'm curious what it's like being the creator of a show and then bringing the show to life on a stage, on an album, and seeing the reaction from the fans right up close, because it's definitely something a lot of showrunners and writers don't really have.
Exactly. We're in a really fortunate place where we get to go out and see the people who are interested in this project every night, and it's a big reaction. And it's the best crowds I've ever seen at a show. Truthfully, I go and I observe shows all the time, and I love them. But our audiences are so great, because what we're doing is we're trying to bring the world of Metalocalypse and celebrate the whole thing. It's not just a show. It's not just a live show where we get the songs right. It's a whole experiential situation. And we're not Dethklok. We are making the sounds of Dethklok. The big show is this gigantic movie theater size screen behind us that is completely synced up with our playing, because our great drummer, Gene Hoagland, is got a click track that's kind of letting him, every downbeat is coinciding with the cut. So there's a technical aspect to this whole thing. And what I wanted to do in this initial idea, and I still think is a really good idea, is I wanted the audience to feel like they're on an amusement park ride. They're at Universal Studios or something, and they're going on the Terminator 2 ride or something like that. And bad guys come and then you would go boo, and the good guy comes and they go yay. And it's just a really fun experience that you're watching a live cartoon and a live band at the same time. And it's built to be a celebration of all things heavy metal of the entirety of the show.
And I'm curious how a Dethklok performance or tour has evolved over the years, because the technology of live music has evolved over the years. What did a live Dethklok show look like in, say, 2009 versus what it's going to sound like this year?
Well, it had some growing pains when it started out. So when it started out in 2007 was our first tour, and it was a college tour, and we didn't go out with other heavy metal bands. We went out with kind of a more of an indie rock band. Somebody paired us with a band called And You Will Know Us by the Trail of the Dead, which is a really cool band, but not a heavy metal band. And so the audience was kind of confused because like you don't mosh to indie rock. So we thought, yeah, okay, one of the first lessons is let's go out with really cool heavy bands that we think are awesome. And we were also running the whole show from like a DVD in a DVD player. This is like old, old technology where shaking, our DVD would skip and our show would skip. So it's hard to, and Gene, being a perfectionist drummer, would find out where we skipped and rush us to the next part by looking through his peripheral vision and playing and speeding up his tempo to get us to where we need to. So now we're all off of a hard drive, and it's the terror of having a full length concert where you hope we don't get some kind of virus that stops the show. I always stand back and go, the audience is not interested in it, gets cut from the show. So let's just constantly keep. This is all these. Look at all these people. There's thousands of people out there. How do you they got here somehow. They parked their cars. Some of them got babysitters. Some of them brought their whatever it is. Like it's hard to get to a show, and there's been a whole pandemic. We want to make sure that ultimately, if I'm not entertaining you, if we're not entertaining you collectively, then we have failed. So it's about getting the audience excited, because I've gone to shows where I've seen like a band that you haven't seen in a long time, and they play stuff that you're like, I don't know why you're playing this. I don't know why you're playing, like, it's been a long time since we've seen everybody. Play us the stuff that we love, please. I remember David Spade had a funny joke in his stand-up where he'd say, like, I want to go to a show. I want you to play it like the record. No tricks.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, the Dethklok audience is still engaged after all these years, but you are making or are working on a Metalocalypse movie film to, I read that it's going to act as the conclusion to the show, as opposed to having like a mini series or a finale episode. It's going to be this movie. What can you tell us about this Metalocalypse film that's in the works?
Well, this is like, this is probably what, I guess, technically, since it's honoring the story so much, it's 15 years in the making, maybe more. And the idea is to conclude from where we started on the show to right now, So there's a lot of work that goes into making a feature animated movie in the time frame that we did, because some of these movies take 5-6 years. Ours we had to do quickly. And the question was, how do we make this the most cinematic? How do we up the ante from what we've done? How do we make it more evocative, more cinematic, more dire, more intense? Like, I mean, you hear this new record, it's more intense than anything we've done. This movie is more intense than anything we've done too. How do you make it more emotional? How do you really put the audience through the paces and put the band through the paces and deliver something that is worthy of the time that has passed waiting for this thing to happen? So there's a lot of pressure on us to deliver it, and the audience will be the guide. They'll tell us, because the reason that we're doing this, the whole reason we're here, is because people kept on watching over the years and kept on, showing people that our metrics were good, that that there are numbers there, that, like, this show is kind of like a weed. It gets ripped out and it grows back, and then nobody watered it or anything. It just keeps being alive. And so what I wanted to do was give something to the audience that honors the show, the series, and just the notion of heavy metal by itself too. So a lot of pressure on us to do something. So it's no longer ours. It's now for the audience, and it's theirs to do with what they wish.
And for the audience who have remained loyal all these years, is there anything you want them to know about Dethalbum IV prior to the first listen?
Yeah, I think this album is kind of like it's functioning in concert with the movie and the score soundtrack, because there's a score soundtrack too that is not heavy metal. It's more of a film score kind of a thing that I'm really proud of that. I really enjoyed being able to play in that world because it's melodically different, harmonically different, and it really is dramatic. It really is pushing you and pulling you into different directions. Dethalbum IV functions in a very important kind of notion in the movie where one side of the record is fury, aggression, music to get into a fight to, just pedal to the metal, uh, fist. And the other side of the record is mystical, expansive, bigger, a little bit more melodic. It's the hand. So we talk about the fist and the hand. You can hear it in the trailer of the movie, but this is something that is like this kind of good and evil. This kind of like kind of swirling. What am I? Am I good or am I evil? That's what this movie is asking. That's what this album is asking. And it is. You'll hear it is more intense, more aggressive, and more epic. And the whole thing ends with this gigantic Viking funeral of a song that is and it was, and we used a lot of new techniques, and we really wanted to kind of keep it in with a modern metal kind of a feel in production and in execution.
Yeah, it all sounds very exciting. Dethklok, Dethalbum IV. Stream it, get the CD, vinyl, cassette, whatever you got to do, and also Army of the Doomstar.
And, I will say this about that. You know, I always think CD quality is better than streaming. I always think the vinyl is cooler than the CD. And in this case, I am like one of those physical media aficionados out there with movies, with everything. I go buy the Blu-ray, I get the 4K, and we have a Blu-ray in this movie, and that's with the 5.1 sound. We spent a lot of time getting the sound right. You know, got the sound right on the record, you may as well get the sound right in the movie. So 5.1, listen to it in a 5.1, watch the Blu-ray. It's gonna be better than streaming. That's what I think. So get the physical. No one can ever take it down. You'll always have it. So that's what I think. That's kind of the director's choice is check out the Blu-ray, listen to the 5.1. Don't just stream a stereo version of it somewhere. Check out the whole experience. Immerse yourself. Make a whole night of it.
All right, definitely will. Thank you so much, Brendon. This is Patrick, WSOU 89.5.